Well, hi everyone. Thanks for watching .NET Conf this year. Welcome to my session, Build an SDK with OpenAPI and NSwag. My name is Laura Rodriguez. I'm an SDK engineer working at Okta, and I'm based in Toronto. At Okta, we provide authentication and authorization services for applications, and my team is responsible for building the SDKs and tools for different languages and technologies. So OpenAPI and code generation are things that we use on a daily basis. Today, I walk you through the process of building a modern web API, leveraging the latest .NET features, and generate an SDK library compatible with multiple .NET versions and other languages thanks to OpenAPI. This is going to be a hands-on session, so I'm going to share the agenda first so you can get a glimpse of what we'll be doing for the next 30 minutes. Well, we're going to start building a minimal API with .NET 7 to manage our grocery list. Who hasn't ever forgotten what to buy at the grocery store? I'm sure many of you do the same. I'm the same. Anyway, so we're going to build a super simple API, nothing too crazy. And once we have our API ready, we're going to see how you can generate the API specification thanks to OpenAPI, the OpenAPI feature and Swagger. After that, we're going to protect our sensitive endpoints, and we're going to see how that is reflected in our API specification. Then we are going to use the API specification to generate our grocery API client, and with NSwag, and then we are going to create our grocery SDK project using the generated client. At this point, we should be able to test our SDK. So we're going to do just that. We're going to create a console application to test our SDK. Finally, we'll review other generators you can use to expand your SDK support to other languages. And of course, we'll have some time for Q&A. So yes, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to build 3 projects: the API, the SDK, and a sample application. But don't worry, because at the end of the session, I'll share a link to my repo where you can get all the projects that we're going to build today. So let's get started. Now it's time to switch our presentation. Perfect. So as I mentioned before, we're going to create a web API to manage our grocery list. So let's go ahead, create a web API, use .NET 7, no authentication this time. We're going to use minimal APIs, enable OpenAPI support, and use top-level statements. Sweet. For this demo, I'm going to use an existing data access layer that I created before, which has all the necessary logic to persist our grocery items. Let's take a quick look at what we have here. We have a grocery DB context. It has our items there. We also have a grocery repository, which has all the basic methods to add, update our items, save changes, etc. And in the constructor, I added a few grocery items for testing purposes. We also have a grocery items which has an ID, name, description, and quantity. And let's go ahead and include this project as a dependency so we can use it right away. Sweet. Now let's go back to our API and add the following lines to configure dependency injection for our repository and register our database. We're using in-memory database. Now, let's remove all the default boilerplate so we can start clean with our API implementation. Perfect. We're going to start with one of the simplest methods, getAll. Perfect. So here we have mapGet. Our route is API groceries. And we have our repository injected. We return type results.ok with our items. And the name of this operation is get grocery items. Now it's time of get by ID. Sweet. Let me include this. Perfect. The route here needs an ID. And in this case, it's possible that we are not finding the item that we are looking for. So we need to indicate that here, all the possible results, okay or not found. We need the ID from the route, and also we are injecting the grocery repository. The implementation is pretty straightforward. We get the item, and if we find it, we return okay, otherwise not found. The name of this operation is get grocery item. Let's run this project and see what we get. Oh, I forgot the one more endpoint. Sorry about that. So we have groceries. This endpoint is to add a new grocery item. And we are injecting the grocery repository and, of course, the item that we are going to add. We try to add the item, we save changes, we assume everything is okay in this demo, and we return type results.created with the route to the new item and the grocery item. The name is add grocery item. Now, yes, let's run this project and see what we get. Sweet, we have this beautiful UI with a lot of information about our API. We do have our model at the bottom, and also all our endpoints are listed here with 0 additional effort. What? How did this happen? We'll review that in a minute, but first, let's test our endpoints. We're going to start trying with a new item. It's going to be ice cream, vanilla, cup. I know it's boring. And 2. Let's click execute. Sweet, we have a 201, our items there, but also I want to try my get all method and see if my item has been added successfully. Sweet, there is my item. So let's go back to the question of how did this happen. We didn't add any additional code to create this UI, which happens to be fully integrated with our API. Well, this is the magic of OpenAPI and tools like Swagger. As you can see in this screen, if we scroll to the top, we see a link to our OpenAPI specification. But what exactly is OpenAPI? Well, the OpenAPI specification is a programming language agnostic standard for documenting HTTP APIs. It allows humans to understand your API's capabilities and computers to process and generate documentation, servers, clients in various programming languages. So let's take a look at this spec here. As you can see, this is a JSON schema, and it has a lot of information about my, my grocery API. It has many attributes, and let's start from the top. Here is the OpenAPI specification version, also the title and the version of my API. We have the path with all our routes. In this case, we have API groceries and all the possible HTTP methods like get and post for this particular one. We also have tags, which is basically a tag that is helpful to categorize our endpoints. If we have other type of endpoints, we probably use a different name here. For example, travel API, if we had like a travel API. Then the operation ID, in this case, is get grocery items, and all our possible responses. In this case, we have a 200 status code, and we are returning an array of grocery items. Here's a link to the schema, and if we scroll down, our schema is there. It has all our properties. Additional properties indicate that the only properties a grocery item can have are the ones defined here, and that won't be possible getting or adding other properties dynamically. Now, let's go back to our UI. This UI is generated by Swagger, which is a tool that uses the OpenAPI specification and builds static files to visualize and interact with the API's resources. Now, let's go back to the code to understand this a bit better. Because we enable OpenAPI, the program file comes with the following lines. First, we have Add Endpoints API Explorer, which basically allows the API Explorer to expose the endpoint's metadata, such as the route, the responses type, etc. Then we have Add Swagger Gen, which adds the Swagger generator to the service collection and utilizes the metadata provided by the API Explorer. At the bottom, we have Use Swagger and Use Swagger UI, which enable the middleware for serving the generated JSON schema and the Swagger UI. Perfect. Now it's time to protect our endpoints. I don't want other people to mess up with my vanilla ice cream, honestly. So let's go to our project, and we are going to install the JWT dependency. Let's try to find it here. Oh, it's there. I'm going to click Install. All set. And now let's go back to our program file, and let's add the following lines to enable JWT authentication with our bearer scheme. Now, let's go ahead and add the authorized attribute to the endpoints we want to protect. Perfect. For this session, we're going to use one of my favorite features to test our protected endpoint, and this is user JWTs. This feature allows me to create and use a token that is only valid for this machine and for this user. Here you have to run this command, .NET user JWTs create, and here is my token. Remember that in production, you might need to use an identity server, an identity provider. Okay, let's take a look at the app settings development JSON to see the changes that this command did to allow these user JWTs. Perfect. Before testing our API, we need to configure Swagger to support bearer tokens. So let's go ahead and add the following line. Here, we're basically telling Swagger to infer the security schemes from the endpoints. So let's go to the endpoint we want to protect and add the following lines. This time, we are using the with OpenAPI method. This method accepts a function that can be used to modify the OpenAPI annotations. So far, the spec has been taking the endpoint's metadata, but you can also override that information with this method. Here, we're basically adding a new OpenAPI security requirement, and we are configuring this particular endpoint to accept bearer tokens. Perfect. Now we have our UI again. As you can see, we have an authorized section here, and the protected endpoint has a lock. Let's try this. We're going to add our token, the one that we just created, and let's go ahead and try our protected endpoint. Item, protected. I'm going to click execute. And sweet, it's here. As you can see, the authorization header is present, and we have a 201. Now, let's see how that's reflected in our specification. Here we have the add grocery item operation, and there is our security information as well as here. Now, all the consumers know that this endpoint requires a security scheme. Perfect. Now it's time to use our specification and generate our SDKs. So we're going to open NSwag and paste our OpenAPI specification on the left side. You can also use the CLI if you want. Let's take a look at the configuration. Here we are using .NET 6. We're going to generate a C# client. You can also generate controllers or even TypeScript clients. And let's see, our namespace will be NSwag Grocery SDK, as you can see here. And then if we scroll down, I'm going to select to inject the HTTP client via constructor and also generate interfaces. We are going to use newtonsoft.json, and we're going to click generate output. Sweet. Here is our generated client. I suggest you play with all the settings here, but we're going to review that from our SDK because it looks better here in Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and create a new project. This is going to be a class library, and we're going to use .NET Standard. So the SDK is compatible with multiple versions and multiple .NET implementations such as Xamarin or Unity. Let's name this NSwag Grocery SDK. Now we're going to select .NET Standard and hit Create. Now let's rename the default class to API Client. And here we're going to paste the generated code from NSwag. Let's go ahead, copy that, and paste that here. We will need to install newtonsoft.json because it requires that. We saw that. So let's go ahead to, let's go to NuGet and try to find that dependency, newtonsoft.json. Sweet. Let's install that. And hopefully all these errors will disappear in a second. It seems like that. Let's run rebuild solution and success. Let's take a look at the generated file. We're going to scroll to the top and start from there. Perfect. As you can see, we have the namespace that we configured, and we have an iClient interface which has all the methods that our API has. And since this interface is async by default, our methods require cancellation token. We also have the default implementation, the client. This is a partial class which has multiple partial methods that you can optionally implement to customize the request and the response. In the constructor, we need the API URL, and we need to inject an HTTP client. Now let's take a look at one of the implemented methods. For example, add grocery item. So this is the implementation. As you can see here, a new request is created. We have all the information we need to add to the request, method, header, content, And here with the HTTP client that we are injecting, we are executing the request. At the bottom, if everything is okay, we just return the response. Otherwise, we throw an API exception. At the bottom, we have some helper methods that allows you to process the request and responses. We also have our model here, grocery item with all our properties, and the API exception, these models. Okay, so this is our SDK. Let's test it out. Let's go ahead and create a console application. This time, I'm going to use .NET Core 3.1 just to make sure that my SDK is compatible with older versions. Sweet. Let's try adding our SDK as a project reference. And now let's add the following lines to initialize our client. So I'm gonna paste this here. I'm creating a new HTTP client, adding the header. I'm gonna use the URL that my API is using, and I'm gonna copy the generated token here. Perfect. Now let's add this piece of code to get the items from the original list and list them in the screen. After this, we're gonna add the following piece of code to add a new item. Remember that this time the SDK should be using the protected endpoint. And finally, we're gonna list the updated list. Perfect. We have some read keys to give the API some time to run properly. Let's configure Visual Studio to run our API and the sample application. And now let's try this. Here is our API, and this is our console application. Seems it's working, it's doing something. Super. Our new item is there, the original list as well, so this worked. Let's go back to our presentation. Leila, can you please? Perfect. Now it's time to go further. So what happens if you want to expand a support to multiple languages? Because so far we've seen how to use the OpenAPI specification to generate your API in C#. But you don't have to stop there. You can expand your SDK support to other languages as well. There are other tools such as the Open Generator Text or the Swagger CodeGen, which basically provides multiple generators for multiple languages. I think actually that the OpenAPI generator text has around 50 or 70. It's like it's insane. So you can generate your SDK in multiple languages, not only the ones that you see here, but many more. So I recommend you exploring these tools. They offer CLIs, they have some online tools as well, and take your API to the next level to support other languages. Well, that's all, folks. I really, really hope you enjoyed this session. I hope you learned something new. And as I promised, here is the link to my repository. You will find there all the projects that we built today, plus all the resources to keep learning about all these topics. So now it's time for questions. I'm not sure if there are some questions from the audience.
Let me have a little look. There was one from Gutam and also from myself. You said you're using, we had the same question. You're still using Newtonsoft.json. Is that because you don't support system.text.json? Was there a reason for that?
Just because it was the default option that NSwag provided me, and to simplify this demo, of course. But yes, you can play. I suggest you play with the NSwag settings and even with other generators. And sometimes they also provide templates that you can edit, and you can add your own dependencies or everything you want to add. So you just edit the templates and the generator will do the magic for you.
Alrighty, cool. I'm just having a look to see if there were any others. There is one. What is the purpose of the type results that are returned from your map get method?
The map get, okay. Yeah, so the type results, it's equivalent at to the results that we used to have in the classic API, I guess. And basically, it provides additional information of the concrete type that you are returning. As you can see, when we use that, the OpenAPI specification knew that we were returning a grocery item. So basically, type results allows to provide additional metadata about the concrete type for minimal APIs.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Laura. And if you need more information, everything is shared there on Laura's screen. And yeah, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your morning. And thank you so much for joining us with all of that. Great demos there and everything. So
Thank
thank
you,
you so
Leila.
much.